From Eyewitness News, this is Newsmakers.
Our Newsmakers debate series continues. This week, a primary debate between the two Democrats running for mayor of North Providence. The incumbent, Charles Lombardi, has served as mayor since a special election in 2007. He was re-elected in 2008 and 2012. No political newcomer herself, Kristen Catanzaro has been a town council member since 2011 and served 2 terms as the council president. This week, Catanzaro, Lombardi debate the issues on Newsmakers. Welcome to this special edition of Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. I will be moderating this debate and asking questions along with WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi. Mr. Lombardi, Ms. Catanzaro, thank you very much for accepting our invitation. As you both know, there is no strict format to this debate. We're looking for an open and honest discussion of the issues. But if we feel that you're taking too long or you're not answering the questions, we will jump in. To begin, each candidate gets a 1-minute opening statement. The order was drawn randomly prior to this debate. First up, Mr. Lombardi, your 1-minute opening statement.
Thank you. I want to thank both Tim White and Ted Nesi for hosting this debate and thank my opponent for this opportunity. In April 2007, when I first sat behind the mayor's desk, in the silence of the room, I made a commitment that I would utilize the skills I have acquired in business to place North Providence on sound financial footing and improve the quality of life of all of our residents. The town has had to overcome numerous obstacles, including a $10.5 million deficit and the loss of millions of dollars in state aid, including the loss in revenue sharing and a near junk bond rating. However, through it all, the residents and employees of our town have persevered, attaining a first ever A bond rating, a second consecutive year without a tax increase, and a $6.3 million surplus. Another town success story is the acquisition of Camp Maine, a pristine property for all of our residents to enjoy for years to come. And thanks again for the opportunity.
All right, Mr. Lombardi, thank you very much. Now, Ms. Catanzaro, your 1-minute opening statement.
Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you very much for having us today, and thank you, Mr. Lombardi, for our third and final debate. Over the last several months, I've run a very grassroots campaign. I'm very proud of that because what that means for the residents is I've gone door to door, I've spoken with them, and I've listened to their concerns, and they're very, very frustrated. I'm here today looking forward to a very lively debate, hoping that your questions that you ask myself and my opponent will really show the differences between our government styles. As far as North Providence and where they're heading, we can't keep up the same pace of tax increases. The residents are frustrated. Their taxes have continually gone up. We cannot afford another 4 years of a Lombardi administration.
Ms. Catanzaro, thank you very much. And before we get to our first question, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the solid reporting of 2 beat reporters from North Providence, Ethan Shorey of the Valley Breeze and Jacqueline Tempera from our news partner, the Providence Journal. Their reporting was an important part of our research. So now let's get to the issues. As you said, this is the third debate. Best for last, of course.
Thank you.
Welcome to Channel 12. Let's start with taxes. And Mr. Lombardi, we're going to begin with you. You like to tout the town's finances and that you've increased the surplus after inheriting a multi-million-dollar deficit. But meanwhile, like many communities, you have a regressive car tax. Why haven't you prioritized lowering the car tax for the hardworking people of North Providence?
We will be addressing that very shortly. We haven't had the finances to do that at this point in time without raising or costing the homeowners an additional tax. We have a bottom line in the town of North Providence. We need X amount of dollars to manage the town. So we have accumulated a $6.3 million surplus through it all, but we're also mandated by the Department of Revenue and the Auditor General that we need to maintain an 8% rainy day fund. We're not there yet. That needs to be about $7.2 million. We hope to attain that by next year. And at that point, we will be addressing the car taxes.
So you're saying your hands were absolutely tied. There was no way you could have put less into the surplus to give tax relief to the people of North Providence?
We were mandated to attain that 8% rainy day fund. We're not there yet. I'd love to be using that money to give the taxpayers a little more relief. But as you know, this was the second consecutive year there was no tax increase in the town of North Providence.
All right, Ms. Catanzaro, I'm going to have you respond to some of the specifics in there. But first, a very specific question for you, you've not been shy about saying taxes have been too high under Mr. Lombardi. You said it in your opening statement. So if you're elected, what will you lower the car tax rate to in your first year?
Well, the car tax rate is a set rate right now. What I've always advocated for, which I've been the only elected official in the town of North Providence consistently that has gone to the state, it's a twofold system. So it's not necessarily the rate, it's the depreciation on the vehicles that was taken away back in 2009. And with multiple years of surpluses, this was something that I did not feel was right for the residents of North Providence to have that double hit. So that would be something that I am focusing on while continuing going to the state and the General Assembly, looking at a more fair value system for them. And one thing I would like to say as far as the surplus, we are not mandated until this year, when we paid off the $10.5 million, or the taxpayers paid off the $10.5 million debt service bond, to start a rainy day fund now.
I've heard this litigated in other debates, Mr. Lombardi. So yes or no? Is she right? Does that mean that
No,
this was the year that you had to trigger that 8%?
We had a time frame to attain or to pay off the deficit and attain an 8% rainy day fund. We're 3 years early in attaining the $6.3 million surplus.
So you could have slowed the growth of the surplus fund then by maybe lowering or holding taxes.
No, not in my opinion, no.
Ms. Catanzaro?
Well, he's wrong, because he just admitted it's done 3 years early. And according to the law and the ordinance that was passed through the Auditor General, it clearly states the year after you pay off your debt service payment, you must start putting away 1% toward a rainy day fund. So he squeezed the taxpayers. So not only were we paying off the $10.5 million debt, we had multiple years of surpluses on top of it with no tax relief.
Before we get to Ted's question on this, Moody's Investors Services warned just last month that North Providence's bond rating could actually be downgraded if its financial reserves shrink. You keep saying you don't want the town to build up the surpluses or the rainy day fund at the rate that he did. So why aren't you more concerned about getting the town's bonds downgraded, and that would raise borrowing costs for taxpayers?
I do understand that, and I'm not discounting the fact that we have a good bond rating. It was not done in a methodical growth. And according to how we were supposed to do it, to keep the town affordable for the taxpayers, we should have done it methodically, and we didn't do that. So I think if we took into consideration that the taxpayers were our #1 priority, to keep the affordability and to put the money over the years into the fund, the way according to the law, it wouldn't have been such a large hit on the taxpayers all at once.
Mr. Lombardi, 30 seconds, final thought.
Moody's Investment, who the financial community is going to dictate the fate of our town. Moody's Investment 2 years ago raised our bond rating, the first time A bond rating in 34 years. 2 weeks ago, we received another increase in our bond rating. Those are the people I'm concerned with. We're going to have to go to bond for a school project. By raising this bond rating, it's going to save us $2.5 million in a 20-year note to address our school system. And when Janie Montgomery is saying that they think that they know this is the quickest turnaround they've seen in 25 years in business of any community, those are the people that I'm concerned with.
Ted?
Ms. Catanzaro, you've said in previous debates you're the candidate. It's not appropriate that questions have been raised about decisions your husband made when he was the fire chief in North Providence. And yet there have been a series of stories that at least raise some questions for voters: the $17,000 payment, the inaccurate documents for Paul Labadia, the 52-year-old in the fire department. Are you saying voters would be wrong to take that into account as they decide whether they want you to lead the town?
Yes. I was not part of any of the administrations that those decisions were made. I've governed and I've led for the last 6 years based on the needs and the concerns of the residents. So I sit here honestly saying whatever happened with my family or questions that arose have nothing to do with the way I've led the town or how I will lead the town as the next mayor of North Providence.
Some of those are still live issues that are, whether in the courts or just figuring out a resolution to those. Would you recuse yourself if there were things that were being litigated or dealt with in another way through the mayor's office that your husband was involved in?
I am not aware of anything that is being litigated, so I can't say that I'm aware of anything like that. To my knowledge, nothing is being litigated and nothing has ever been done wrong by my husband. It's just constant criticism from the mayor's office.
The town is still fighting Paul Labadia's pension, and he has opened an active investigation into former firefighter Stephen Campbell. So there are two active ongoing things that might return, as Ted says, to your desk. Will you recuse yourself if they land on your plate?
If it involves my husband, yes, but my husband has not had any lawyer's letter to him. He was exonerated from the state police in any kind of investigation when he was asked. So there's nothing that he's involved with as far as I know. So your answer, yes, I would. It would be the right thing to do.
Ms. Lombardi, putting aside the merits of those stories, it is clear you don't mind going after your enemies, your opponents in the media. Chief Catanzaro said that you went to the press about that $17,000 payment before you actually went to him about getting the money back. Is that an abuse of the power you hold as the mayor over investigations and things like that?
No, when I identify abuse and waste, Ted, then I will address it. And by the way, I have to thank my opponent for bringing that to my attention. I didn't know about that until there was a complaint of the previous fire chief in receiving a raise in pay or a bump in his pay. At that point, I thought I would go back to see exactly the increments in the percentage of pay increases for other department heads. And when we did that, that's when we discovered that for a 2-week payroll period, there was a $20,000 check that was cut to Mr. Catanzaro. So, do I go out of my way? Absolutely not. Look, all I'm looking for the taxpayers of the town of North Providence is a decent day's work for a decent day's pay.
But Chief Catanzaro is not running for mayor. Ms. Catanzaro is running for mayor.
He isn't, but she brought up the situation of the chief, that was our chief at the time, receiving a raise. So you can't talk out of two sides of the occasion or your mouth, so to say. Okay? The bottom line is there's money out there that's owed to the taxpayers. You need to pay it back.
Do you want to respond to that, Ms. Catanzaro?
Yes, please, thank you. It's constant deflection on Mr. Lombardi's part. He continuously talks about my family, and he knows he talks about my family. My husband did a job, and he was compensated for it. You didn't like when your family was talked about, did he, Mr. White? And if we had a can of wax here today, I would certainly give it to you.
And I'd be glad to use it if you had the justification to do that. The fact of the matter is, your husband he said he was the EMA director. It took 11 months for this explanation. And as far as I'm concerned, that was a lame explanation. Why did it take 11 months? We were paying an EMA director at the same time. Can't pay two people. The honorable thing is, cut the check, pay the taxpayers back. You owe the money to the taxpayers. And this is not your first rodeo.
He was out on sick leave, Mr. Lombardi.
We took $47,000 back to a check, and also in his annuity while I was there for 2 weeks, by the way, you had to return $47,000 to the taxpayers.
We could do the whole show on this. I'll give you 30 seconds because I know you're starting to respond there.
Thank you. I think Mr. Lombardi continues to deflect, as you can see. He's talked about my family several times. It's a deflection. We need to focus on the issues that are facing the taxpayers in the town of North Providence. It's a constant blame. And yes, I did question his fire chief at the time because he received $152,000 in sick and vacation time before he even retired. And he received more in his paycheck, which fattened up his pension against the budget ordinance, what the town council approved. So if you want to talk about deflection, that is the deflection we're facing.
As Ted points out, this is a half-an-hour debate, so I want to move on. As a matter of fact, I want to go through a rapid-fire section. I'm looking for one-word answers, pretty much from the both of you, because we want to get through some topics rather quickly. Yes or no, Mr. Lombardi, would you ever consider a firefighter shift change from 4 platoons to 3 like Mayor Lorza did in Providence? Yes or no?
Not at this time.
And Ms. Catanzaro?
Not at this time.
Ms. Catanzaro, would you support police officers wearing body cameras?
Yes.
Mr.
Absolutely.
Lombardi? Mr. Lombardi, would you support? Who do you support? Excuse me, in Senate District 7, incumbent Frank Chacon or Doris De Los Santos?
I would be supporting Frank Chacon.
Ms. Catanzaro?
I'm not supporting either candidate at this time.
Ms. Catanzaro, experts recommend middle school and high school students start no earlier than 8:30 in the morning. Your high school starts at 7:35. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. Would you consider moving the start time to 8 or 8:30?
Yes.
Mr. Lombardi, you get the high school student vote on both of that. Good for you. Mr. Lombardi, letter grade for the job performance of former Mayor Ralph Mollis, A through F.
D.
Ms. Catanzaro.
B.
And final question, Ms. Catanzaro, do you support the $75 million bond referendum for 2 new schools and an upgrade to others?
Yes.
Absolutely.
You gave a little pause there.
Well, I was going to answer something, but you said we can only give yes or no.
I will say you two are very good about the rules of rapid fire. You don't usually get
so far.
such compliance.
Go ahead, Ted.
Mr. Lombardi, I want to ask about the police department, another topic people have read about in the news. The issues in the North Providence PD have become a statewide story. To be honest, as someone who lives outside the town, my question is a simple one. Why have you let such a troubled department go 5 years without a permanent chief?
The former chief, Chief Martellini, who became the sheriff, deputy at the sheriff's department, at that point, he chose to be the acting chief, didn't want to be the permanent chief. And that is what's happening with us at this time. I will say this, I've taken a little bit of a hit for the fact that we've had some acting directors. We've saved over $400,000 by addressing or not appointing some permanent personnel. So I will tell you this, I told the chief this for the last 2 months when he's ready, and I would be appointing him the permanent chief. At this point in time, I think he's a little uncomfortable because of the uncertainty in the department and the fact that the union is trying to run the department.
But if he's uncomfortable as acting chief with the situation, how's he going to handle it when he's the permanent chief?
We've been talking about that, and he's going to become the permanent chief, I can tell you that.
So you have no concerns, even though he's having difficulty handling the situation?
The difficulty that he's having handling the situation, Ted, is the fact that the union keeps throwing a number of issues at the wall, hoping that something will stick to fire the chief. I'm not going to allow the union to run the police department.
Ms. Catanzaro, there are some folks in town who think that you have said you want legal fees to be down, et cetera, but people worry that'll turn into being too friendly with the unions and that maybe you won't drive a hard bargain as the mayor. Can you point to anything you did as council president the police union opposed?
No.
So are people correct to worry you'll be too close to them and that you won't be able to sort of, be the taxpayers' advocate against the unions looking, as they should, for more salary and benefits?
Absolutely not. I think negotiating and communicating instead of dictating and litigating is really the key. And Mr. Lombardi is absolutely wrong by saying that having acting positions have saved the town money. What happens with acting positions? They're allowed to collect sick time, vacation time, overtime, comp time at higher rates and the higher rate of pay. So that's an absolutely false statement. Right now, our acting police chief went from a lieutenant to an acting chief who received the higher salary of $92,000. So when he leaves, all of his sick time will be paid out at a higher rate, along with all the others. So that's an absolutely false statement. And as far as the police department, it is a paramilitary department. and it should be run by a qualified individual, not by a micromanager elected official who has no training in law enforcement at all. That is the problem, and that is why the department has a D rating. Dysfunctional under Mr. Lombardi's administration, and it will not happen under mine.
I'll get to your response in one second, Ms. Lombardi, but Ms. Catanzaro, do you know who you would appoint as permanent chief if you're elected?
No, I do not. I'm focused on the election and listening to the people and getting them out to vote to make a choice on Tuesday. I will take that as it comes after the election.
You heard the criticism there, Mr. Lombardi. Your response.
We've saved thousands with not appointing a permanent police chief at the time and a permanent fire chief also.
Why doesn't every town do that then?
People have different methods of managing, Tim. And our record shows, look, our crime rate is down 34%. So I don't think that an acting police chief is jeopardizing the public safety of the taxpayers of our town. And by the way, if we're saving a position, and I think that's where the savings come in, we're saving a position. Where I come, it's all about saving money. And by the way, again, I want to keep going back to where we are financial and what the financial community is saying about us. I want to read that where Moody says that it's continued stabilization of the town's financial position.
But I don't want to get off the police, and I know Tim has a question coming up, but just one final thought on that, which is after 5 years of acting police chiefs, if that's the right way to do it, shouldn't things be working better in the police department?
The police department, we have a dysfunctional personnel issue. We need a little more time to get through that. I will tell you this, that I'm not ready to give up the management of the police department to the police union and strip that from the taxpayers. Not going to happen.
Ms. Catanzaro, you like to highlight checks and balances out in the campaign, and certainly as a town council person, you would do that. You would be checks and balances to the executive office. So why haven't you pushed to appoint people to the town's ethics commission that was passed 6 years ago?
When I first took office, that vote came, I believe, in October of 2010, and the town was at an all-time low. I was a new council person. So what I did was I went to the ethics commission after we had voted for that, and I felt that asking the Ethics Commission if we needed to appoint our own legal team, if we needed to appoint people within the community that knew the people that would have some political influence, and I spoke with Jason Gromit. We had an open meeting. It was advertised, and he did tell us that the litigation process, if you were to put someone litigate someone, was very costly, and the state felt that their system in place would take care of that.
So why haven't you dissolved the Ethics Commission through ordinance or proposed that anyway?
You know, it's a good question. I really don't have a viable answer, and I admit that. We have been asked that, and I really think it's just by putting the Financial Audit Committee together, having that oversight committee, we felt that the answer as a council, not just myself, as a council, that knowing that the State Ethics Commission was there, that they would protect any wrongdoing, as they did in the case with the former controller, who is still working for the town.
Mr. Lombardi, is this going to be one of those rare moments where you have common ground with your opponent? You also have not appointed anyone to the Town Ethics Commission. Do you agree with your opponent?
First of all, we should have had an ethics commission a long time ago.
Well, you have one now, so why haven't you appointed?
We were talking with the council. I'm waiting for a few appointments from the council, and we have a couple of people that we're ready to appoint to.
So you're going to move ahead with this?
Absolutely.
Why? It's been 6 years, Mr. Mayor. Why has it taken you so long to get to this point?
Again, it was just a situation of the council and the mayor's office, putting this together.
Ms. Lombardi, I'll stick with you. The town's, you've been talking a lot about the finances of the town, so I went through the audit, the last one. It shows the town has a $63 million unfunded liability for retirees' health care, and not a penny so far put aside to cover that cost. What's your plan to tackle that?
We put $250,000 away into that program 3 years ago, $250 last year, and another $250 this year. So I believe we're close to, we are at $750,000 with the OPEB. And that was, we waited to address that until we got the police pension funded to the 96%. We're the second highest in the state, by the way, as far as the police
But
pension.
$750,000, that's not a lot when you have $63 million you're looking at.
Again, when we had some serious financial issues in the town of North Providence, where we were insolvent, where we are, you read the Moody's report, and where we're going. This is part of our plan to the future, to start to address some of those issues now that we're going to have the funds to do that.
Ms. Catanzaro, same question, $63 million shortfall for the town retirees' health care. How do you address it?
Mr. Lombardi is correct. He came to the council. We did put together an ordinance for that, and we are putting funds away annually to do that. One of the things that my opponent keeps saying is that when he took over the town, it was in such financial straits. And if you look at the audit that was conducted the year he took office, there was actually a $209,000 surplus. And some of the decisions that Mr. Lombardi made back then were not good decisions. Overspending in the fire department, $3.7 million, not selling the sale of the DPW, underfunding the pension fund, the police pension fund, $2 million. If you read that Moody's report, it'll show you in 2008, 9, and 10, it went as low as 45%.
All right, we're running low on time. 30 seconds to respond, Mr.
30
Lombardi.
seconds is, that $209,000 that my opponent's talking about, if you read it here, there's $1,160,000 in this report of the sale of a DPW garage. It never occurred. The following year, the main page in the next report was a restatement. They had to restate over $3.1 million of money that the previous administration, that she and her husband were part of, by the way, said that we had a $209,000 surplus.
She wasn't part of it, was she?
Yes, she
What was her position?
What was her position? Supported the administration.
It's very obvious he just can't keep my family
All right,
out of his mouth.
we have a little over a minute left. I think the people have been watching this race closely would call it politely a very spirited campaign between the two of you. So I'd like to end with this. Ms. Catanzaro, say one nice thing about your opponent.
One nice thing. I bet he's a great grandpa.
That's a nice thing. Mr. Lombardi.
I really respect the fact that Mrs. Catanzaro has chosen to be part of town government and is willing to spend the time to do that.
I got one more for both of you. 30 seconds. This is statewide and into parts of New England, this program. If someone was coming to North Providence to visit for the first time, what's the one thing they should say?
What's the one thing they should say? They should come up and down Mineral Spring Avenue and say, I want to open up a business here. There's plenty of vacancies, and I want to bring revenue into this town, and that's what I would want them to see.
You're not going to say buy some pasta sauce?
He doesn't sound a lot of fun on a vacation.
A business opportunity. That's what I would like them to see.
30 seconds left, Mr. Lombardi. What's the one thing someone should see in North
I
Providence?
think we have that many vacant stores, but they should see our new Camp Meeting, the crown jewel of the town of North Providence. That's what they should see. That was destined to be a 48-home development, and now is a pristine piece of property for all of our children, their children to enjoy.
Thank you, both of you, for joining us on this debate. I want to remind our viewers that primary day is September 13th, so get out and vote. Thank you for watching. For Ted Nesi, I'm Tim White. We will see you next week right here on Newsmakers.